This is Don Martelli from the BG Video Insights cast. Today, I am happy to be joined from my friend Eric Salerno, who we did some work with in Chelmsford, and you've moved on to a new role. And I'm looking forward to our conversation today, talking about economic development in our local municipalities here in Massachusetts, but specifically what's going on in your town. So, Eric, hello. It's been a long time. Hope you and the family are well.
We are well. Thanks so much, Don.
So, Eric, tell me a little bit about your role in Tyngsborough and how it's impacting sort of the economy in the local community.
Sure. I guess every 10 years I make a change in my career, take a turn. And before joining the team here in Tyngsborough, I was running my own marketing agency, helping clients in the retail and high-tech sectors, also contracting through other agencies, and was volunteering for economic development in Chelmsford. After seeing some of the impacts and the processes that that team went through to affect some specific change and come up with some zoning changes, it was sort of an eye-opener for me in terms of how to have a bigger impact on my community, the area that I live, and decided that I was going to try to basically split my marketing agency, have a private sector and a public sector section, with the goal of eventually serving the public at a municipal level at some point in time. But when the opportunity came up here in Tyngsborough, I decided to short circuit that process and join a municipality full time. And Tyngsborough brought me on board as their planner and economic development director. It had been quite some time since the town had somebody in that role. And the town's been doing a great job building a fantastic team here. So we now have a great experienced conservation director. We just brought on a town engineer. We have somebody in a planning and economic development role. And things are firing on quite a few of the cylinders. Obviously, things have slowed down a little bit due to COVID, but
Sure.
But things have continued to move along. And I think one of the reasons why Tyngsborough's been able to continue to move along is because of the great team that they've put together here. We've been able to respond pretty quickly.
That's great. I know that I think I'm a native New Englander, and people talk about communities outside of Greater Boston in the urban core. Talk to me about Tyngsborough in general. What is the community all about? Its history, and obviously there's a reason why you were drawn there. But talk about Tyngsborough in general for those that may not know about the community.
Sure. Tyngsborough itself, for those of you that might be in other parts of the New England region, it sits right beneath Nashua, New Hampshire. So I like to call us the gateway town to the Middlesex 3 or the Route 3 corridor. So
Sure.
As high-tech employees are coming down out of New Hampshire to Burlington, Bedford, Chelmsford, and even here in Tyngsborough, they're coming right through the Route 3 section. Tyngsborough itself has done a good job balancing its rural character from its past. It was traditionally a farming community like many of the municipalities here. I'd say because of where we are on the outer radius, I'd say we're about 15 miles from the Route 128 loop, which puts us far enough out that we are now in the same position that perhaps Burlington was 25 years ago or so. Maybe Chelmsford was 25 to 30 years ago. That might seem like a long time, but in a lot of cases, when economic development starts to take off, a lot of that development takes place pretty quickly. So having somebody on board that's in the planning role has the opportunity to help direct and make sure things get done the right way. Tyngsborough itself has sort of a small town feel. The zoning for residential development is much more dispersed. It's less dense than other communities. We typically have an 1.5 acre zoning requirement for single family homes. We're working on developing opportunities for slightly more dense housing development. Right now, that's not in our zoning. And when I say we're working on that, we're working on our master plan process right now. So it gives us the opportunity to look for ways to look into controlled development. They've had quite a bit of 40B housing development. on the south side of town, and our northern part of town is where our primary retail district is, right near the entrance into Nashua, where we have a lot of restaurants and retailers. Our farming communities have managed to reach the public through the likes of Parley Farms. We have businesses that use open space like Max's Golf and the Vesper Country Club. We're in the process of deciding what's going to take place and happen on our Tyngsborough Country Club, the owners of which have decided to retire. So, generally speaking, we're a town on the river. People might recognize us as the town with the iconic green bridge that spans the Merrimack River. And people look at Tyngsborough as a place where there's a good mix between amenities, small businesses where we have a lot of homegrown contracting companies and blue collar laborers. We have a great educated and technical manufacturing workforce here. So we have businesses that rely heavily on specialty welding and other types of specialty services.
So it sounds like you have your hands in a lot of different pies. I mean, it's a very busy community, even for being a small New England community, it sounds.
Yeah, that's true. Being in a role that includes planner and economic development
Hmm.
director provides a lot of opportunity for me. And the town is around 12,500 residents, which means that it's probably not quite ready for somebody to fill both of those roles separately. A lot of other communities have a separate economic development director or community development director and a planner. In Tyngsborough, the flow and the pace is just enough to keep me very busy on both sides. And the planning side takes quite a bit of time.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, it's clear that, as developers and builders are looking for opportunities, they have oozed out of Greater Boston and Cambridge and moved out towards, as you pointed, the 128, 105 areas, because there are an abundance of opportunities, and it provides folks like yourself to create those partnerships, but to do it right. So you just don't have developers coming into your community and building mixed use developments that the community doesn't want. But it's important to have folks like you in those roles to sort of be the quarterback, right? Understand what the community needs, what the community wants versus what the vision is on the developer side. So it's obviously, I'm seeing more and more of these types of positions be critical in those rural communities, because there is it's a huge opportunity for growth. And one, you all need the revenue, right? You want the revenue and sort of ease up the tax base, but at the same time, you want to make sure it fits within the culture and the community feel of Tyngsborough.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of towns too. I think a lot of towns face the same problem every 10 years or so, possibly longer, where zoning often has to get updated. Tyngsborough, once we finish our master plan process, will update our zoning bylaws to help get them a little bit more modernized. But in the meantime, when opportunities find their way to town, and we determine that our zoning bylaws really don't do a great job either regulating or defining particular uses, we it's helpful to have somebody in this role so that we can develop um, language around regulations that enable economic development, so they protect the town itself to make sure that there are specific concerns that the residents might have about certain types of development, but also address the needs of specific business use so that they can lawfully and legally develop a business or build
Sure.
a specific development that meets their economic needs.
Mm. So obviously, the other elephant in the room here is COVID. I'm sure that as you took the job and you were heading full steam down master planning, this virus hits and it impacts just about every business, everybody, everywhere around the world. Think about your community in Tyngsborough and your particular role. How have you all, as a group in the community, have addressed COVID? And I'd love to hear from your lens. How has it either changed, or have you pivoted your thinking and strategies for economic development because of what's going on?
Sure. Well, I'd like to answer that, I guess, on three different levels. The first thing I want to acknowledge is that, of course, it hasn't been easy for the small businesses in town. So we have quite a few restaurants that have been adversely affected. They employ local residents. They employ people in our region, and it's been extremely difficult for them. So we're pleased that many of them have had an opportunity to expand to outdoor dining, and it looks like we'll have some limited indoor dining. So things are recovering a little bit. I wanted to make sure I pointed out that the struggle is certainly noticeable. Before I point out some of the positive aspects that have come out of this, from a planning and economic development perspective, being forced to move our planning and application processes online has been a good thing. So a lot of times it just moving processes to a digital workflow, if you will, always gets pushed to priority 8 versus 1 until suddenly you're in a situation like this. So forcing our planning board, zoning board of appeals, conservation commission, board of selectmen to online meetings for Zoom, and ensuring that we can engage with the public has proven that we can actually reach the public effectively that way. We can keep projects moving along in the process, and make some relatively affordable investments in technology that really pay big dividends in terms of getting things done in a faster and more efficient manner. Collecting electronic signatures, making sure that those are accepted with the registry of deeds. There's a lot of steps that we've taken, and it's paid off pretty well. Tyngsborough was one of the, well, I think there were many municipalities, but I was very proud that we kept things up and running right from, I think, April 2nd. So that was only a couple of weeks after the March 10th emergency declaration.
Got it. Well, one thing I find interesting about your background and your particular role now is that you come from a communications world, right? Marketing and communications. And often folks that take those roles, either come, from other public positions and they don't have the training as a marketer or a communicator. But I find that role is like a communications role, right? Because you're communicating with the town, your peers within the administration, developers. So talk about, how you're taking the skills you've learned as somebody who owned an agency and working the agency world and applying that to this particular job. Because it sounds like, communication is a really pretty key thing to what you do generally, but I'd love to how do you pull in your background to sort of help you in this particular role?
Sure. Yeah, I'm still learning, actually, believe it or not, which is one of the things I like about this role. Reaching people in the high tech world is a lot of push. So you got to get your messaging right. Have to put yourself in the right place, and in a lot of cases, it's about website engagement and certain types of offers and incentives. From the public sector, it's very different. Trying to get the public engaged is always a challenge. In a lot of cases, you're working with a lot of the same active town residents, which are great and valuable resources and assets for their communities. But every municipality would probably like to have a greater participation rate, right? We see it with the rates of voting. We see it with,
Sure.
level of participation with specific projects. In a lot of cases, you only get participation when somebody wants to fight something. So from this particular role, in a lot of cases, it's a slow process. I'd probably be lying if I said that one of the things that I've come across that might have been unexpected is the level and depth of potential distrust between the public and even local government. It was something that I might have anticipated with at the federal level or just government in general, but I didn't anticipate a certain level of skepticism, I suppose, from the local level to or from residents to the local government level. So it's a long road to build up trust. If you can build up some transparency in your process, demonstrate that you can hear concerns from the public. These are all active communication activities rather than planned communication activities. So from the private sector, you might have strategy meetings to decide on what you'd be saying for the next 6 to 12 months and how you're going to position something. From a municipal economic development perspective or planning perspective, in a lot of cases, it's the way you communicate while the process is taking place. So you can't really proactively determine what types of messages to put out there to alleviate potential concerns for a project you don't know is coming, in 2 months. So once the project arrives, there might be certain answers or certain proactive messaging to get out there in order to answer the concerns from the public. Some projects are completely non-controversial and get great public support. Well, there's not a lot of communication skills necessary there, but when things are either not misrepresented, but maybe either misunderstood, or there are issues surrounding a particular type of project where there are concerns that can be addressed, or where a project might need to be adjusted slightly in order to address concerns that a developer or somebody who's applied for a special permit might not have considered before, helps build up some trust so that people understand that the team that's here to serve the public are available to address those particular types of concerns. So in a lot of cases, it's an active communication role rather than, even though my title might have planning in it, it's not a planned communications role in
Sure.
most of the time.
Now, your point about sort of fluid, honest, open communications is really important when it comes to working with developers. From our perspective, we do work with developers, and that's one of the things we do preach is that, you have to not just communicate, but really listen and listen to see what the community is saying, decision makers within the town or city, town meeting members or planning board members or economic development committee members. There's a lot of audiences, and it's a lot of sort of listening and digesting and communicating. So I do appreciate sort of the fluidity of that process from your perspective. Last question I got for you is really about the opportunities in Tyngsborough, which we kind of touched upon earlier. Now, clearly you're there in the office. Tyngsborough is open for business. You're looking for folks to sort of partner with the town to help grow your local economy. If I am somebody who's in sort of the private developer space or looking to move my business in that area of Massachusetts, what are the opportunities for growth in Tyngsborough from the business perspective?
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be in this particular role in this particular town. As I had mentioned before, because of where we are with regards to sort of like what ring away from the metropolitan area, we're still part of that metro region, but because we're on the outskirts, we are one of the municipalities that have a few remaining very large parcels of land. So right now we're working with real estate brokers and introducing concepts and ideas to developers for large parcels that are up near our retail district. We have large parcels here on Kendall Road that are literally right up against Route 3 that represent a great opportunity. And it's sort of like we've taken this, or the town itself has taken a very patient approach to find the right opportunities. And I think that's one of the reasons why they brought me onto this role, to help bring in sort of the large scale, well thought out, long-term benefit opportunities. Because Sam Park and Company actually ended up investing in and purchasing the 440 Retail Plaza, which is where the AMC Theater is, where TJ Maxx used to be. They're going to be turning that retail plaza into more of a village shopping style. For those of you that aren't familiar, Sam Park was the developer that did the Point in Littleton. Mm-hmm. I'd say when that retail project finally gets off the ground and starts moving, he does have his special permits in hand. COVID got in the way of pulling some building permits, but it represents a great opportunity along the retail corridor along Middlesex Road in Tyngsborough. So there's restaurant opportunities, there are potential retail and entertainment opportunities. The town itself has adjusted its strategies to a more entertainment and hospitality focus in response to our proximity to tax-free New Hampshire. And some of those larger parcels offer mixed use opportunities. So I think that with the right developer, we might be able to work on either some zoning adjustments, which we can propose to town meeting, to find the perfect opportunity for the right developer that has a grand vision.
That's great stuff. I know that in other communities that surround where you are, that snowball effect, right? One major project comes in, another, oh, geez, there's something in the water in Tyngsborough, and all of a sudden you start to see an influx. And I think the hard part for you will be as that steam starts to pick up a little bit, how do you do it at a pace that is reasonable and still within your master plan and your strategy? Because sometimes the almighty dollar gets, people excited about those particular things, but you still have to kind of, as you pointed out, take a very cautious, communicative, fluid, transparent process to make sure that despite the scale, it all fits within the puzzle you're developing there with the team. So appreciate the insights today. Well, Thank you for joining us. As in the 6 months, a year from now, as things are cranking along there in Tyngsborough, I'd love to have you back on talking about the next wave and Tyngsborough, 15.0, whatever that's going to be. But thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. If folks want to get in touch with you, want to know about opportunities, how should they do that?
Well, they can go to the Tyngsborough website, which is Tyngsborough with the OUGHMA.gov, and click on the planning department. They can also reach me at 743-5361. That's a direct line to my number. Or reach me at esalerno@tyngsboroughma.gov by email. And I'd love to introduce some developers to a couple of different opportunities.
That's great. Well, thanks for joining us today, Eric, and we will see you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. Bye-bye.